It's round 9 here at Grand Prix Detroit. TJ Rogers with Jake Van Lunen, and that is right on the right side of the screen. You are going to see Bogles, and it is up against Eldrazi and Taxes. Nick D'Ambrose up against Alex Hinckley, and it is going to be a Glade Cover Scout early on. But on the left side of the battlefield, it is a Plains Exile Simian Spirit Guide. Make that extra mana, and it's a 2-mana play on turn 1. Thalia, Guardian of Thraben.
Wow, and Alex Hinckley with no second land, immediately getting punished by this powerful legend.
And now we've got an Eldrazi Temple throwing down a Leonin Arbiter. So now shuffling is kind of bust, though this Bogles deck not really known to do a whole lot of shuffling.
Yeah, but if the
Oh,
Bogles
no.
deck does draw Windswept Teeth,
Ghost Quarter targets the land. The Leonin Arbiter says that they can't search their library unless they pay 2. They're unable to. We are now without land, only a Glade Cover Scout, which can turn itself sideways. We've seen 3 cards out of this Bogles deck. Leyline of Sanctity for 0 mana, Glade Cover Scout for 1, and then everything has gone wrong.
this is just incredible. Here we're watching the Taxes part of this Eldrazi and Taxes deck hard at work, doing what it needs to do to win this traditionally bad matchup. Just
Sure.
destroying
Let's do
Alex
Thalia
here.
too. There's not a whole lot of basics in this deck. We're going to pick it up. Game 1 so immediately goes to Nick D'Ambrose against Alex Hinckley. We only got to really showcase one of these 2 decks, unfortunately.
Yeah, and I feel like there's some justice in that, right? Like there's something right with the world when the person who's playing the Bogles deck finds themselves in a situation where they can't interact or play anything that matters.
So, jumping over to another table, we have now got Matthew Hoffman up against Christian Baker, and you can see an Inquisition here on the right side of the screen. Taking a look at the Hand of Storm from Christian Baker. 2 ops, a Manamorphose, Pyromancer's Ascension, Baral, Chief of Compliance, and a Gifts Ungiven. The right side of the table, in that graveyard, you can see Street Wraith, Mishra's Bauble, and a Fetch Land. What is that telling you, Jake?
This is a 4-color Death Shadow deck.
What year is it?
Like really early 2018.
This is a nice one, too. It looks like we have got green. I think we're every color but white.
Yes, every color but white.
Ooh, okay. So we've got some copies of Grim Flayer in the deck. We've got Abrupt Decay. We've got Stubborn Denial floating around in there. This is sort of really where this deck was kind of coming together, and they started stretching out into a wide variety of colors.
Yeah, and the thing is when you're playing one of these Death Shadow strategies, a lot of the time you want to be dealing yourself damage. So by playing with more colors, you're just dealing yourself more damage with your lands, which is fine because it makes your Death Shadow bigger. Matthew Hoffman here, he's playing a matchup that is traditionally pretty good for these Death Shadow strategies. When you have Thoughtseize, Inquisition, and Stubborn Denial, and Abrupt Decay to deal with things like Pyromancer Ascension, and a fast clock in the form of Death Shadow and Tarmogoyf, you should be really well positioned against Storm strategies. However, it's important to note that when you get down to these really low life totals, Grape Shots are a lot easier to get lethal.
So we saw Pyromancer's Ascension come down to the battlefield, but it is quickly answered by an Abrupt Decay from Hoffman. Now that Pyromancer's Ascension, it's an enchantment that says that whenever you cast an instant or a sorcery that shares a name with one already in your graveyard, you put a counter on it. As long as you've got 2 counters on it, anytime that you cast an instant or sorcery, you actually make a copy of it, and you start double casting everything.
Yeah. And this is one of my favorite cards of all time, Pyromancer Ascension.
The main time that I've gotten to play with it outside of Storm was in a deck that all I wanted to do was like name it Pyromancer's Paradise. That was the starting point. So it ended up being a lot of young Pyromancers and then Ascensions. And then I just started copying things like Mana Clash, Lightning Bolt, all that kind of stuff. Mana Clash was especially fun.
Yeah, that sounds especially fun.
All right, so it is an opt. We're going to scry 1, draw a card. 1 mana remains, but we are going to be kicking it back over to Hoffman, who has got a mana base, Breeding Pool, and Blood Crypt. All 4 colors assembled on only 2 lands. An Overgrown Tomb joins the crew, and we are going to continue chipping away at our own life total, a Street Wraith in hand, but there is a Death Shadow lurking in there. The 1 mana 13/13. And if that sounds busted, it's because it's got rules text on the text box. That makes it a little bit worse.
Yes.
Gets -1, or minus X, where X is your life total. So currently that Death Shadow, only a 2/2. But for 1 mana, and now every interaction that costs life from Matthew Hoffman is going to grow this Death Shadow. We're going to fire down a Traverse, the Uvenwald.
And this is going to allow Matthew Hoffman to search his library for any creature or any land because he does have 4 different card types in his graveyard.
Yep, he's got creature, artifact, instant, sorcery, and land. So actually, he's a little bit in excess, and that's part of the reason to use those cards like Mishra's Bauble.
Yeah, I mean, it makes your Traverse stronger. It makes your Tarmogoyf stronger. Every single little cog in this machine makes it more powerful.
Let me ask you about this. We saw him fire down that Traverse using the Overgrown Tomb. He's got green mana available through this breeding pool, but he chose not to use that, and now does not have the black mana to play that Death Shadow. So he's leaving up the breeding pool. Tell me about that.
So he wants to leave open mana for Stubborn Denial. What's especially powerful here is that Christian Baker will recognize that and will be playing around the Force Spike side of Stubborn Denial. What Christian Baker does not know is that Matthew Hoffman also has a Street Wraith in hand. And because Matthew Hoffman also has that Street Wraith in hand, it means that Matthew Hoffman can cycle that Street Wraith, make this Death Shadow into a 4-power creature, and then turn that Stubborn Denial into a 1-mana negate.
And Stubborn Denial, it's counter-target non-creature spell unless its controller pays 1, unless you have a creature's power 4 or greater, which is why that's so important.
Precisely.
All right, well, this 2/2 is looking down Christian Baker with 4 lands. None of these sort of spell-reducing creatures. The Goblin Electromancer, the Baral Chief of Compliance. This graveyard getting, it's got a couple of ops. We saw those early on. The Manamorphose, the Pyromancer Ascension. All of those are sort of out of the hand. So now we've got a bit of a mystery, but 4 mana untapped from a Storm deck who's passing the turn. That usually means one thing.
Gifts ungiven.
Gifts ungiven. 4 mana available for Matthew Hoffman, who is going to shock. We are going to cycle the Street Wraith. We're up to a 6/6 Death Shadow, I believe. And we are going to have Stubborn Denial available. The last couple of cards, was one of those a Temur Battle Rage, do you think?
Yes, he does have a Temur Battle Rage in hand. That card is going to... it doesn't look like it's even going to speed up the clock this game. It will, however, if Christian Baker has some way to interact with these Death Shadows. Leaving up the Stubborn Denial, extremely important here.
And there it is, taking down that Gifts Ungiven counter target spell. Didn't even need the full mode of it. So now that really powerful engine, we knew about it earlier from the Inquisition. It was unable to get taken, and now it is off the field, I suppose, off the frame of reference. And it's Goblin Electromancer that comes down, the 2/2. Fatal Push is going to target it, and Christian Baker is going to pick up the cards. He knows when he's done. That is 12 damage attacking in through these Death Shadows, and we are going to be heading into a Game 2. That means that both teams have assembled a game win. One from the Eldrazi and Taxes player up against Bogles, and one from 4-color Death Shadow up against Storm.
Yeah, and this is a really, really nice matchup for the 4-color Death Shadow deck. We talked about it earlier, but traditionally, Storm does not want to be playing against Thoughtseize Inquisition decks that also present a fast clock, and that's precisely what that deck is.
Oh, now we get to see this deck doing its thing. It's a Glade Cover Scout, but wait, it's got Unflinching Courage, +2/+2 Lifelink Trample. It's also got Daybreak Coronet, +3/+3 Vigilance, Lifelink, everything. First strike, I think, too?
Yes.
Wow. It can only, of course, enchant a creature that is already enchanted. Not that big of a cost in a deck like this. Absolutely one of the most powerful cards. We were able to jump in, so we have now seen turn 1 and the final turn of the Bogles deck. Everything in between, mysterious. We're keeping it in our up our sleeve at the moment. Up to table A. This is the matchup that we have been a bit more familiar with. It is Tron up against Krark Clan Ironworks. Combo versus big mana. On one side, Walking Ballista with 4 counters and a Wormcoil Engine. Tron assembled. On the other side, an Inventor's Fair going to the graveyard alongside Krark Clan Ironworks, engineered explosives, and a couple of nifty lands.
This Inventor's Fair can now search up a Scrap Trawler, and that means that Eric English, along with the artifacts, I can't quite see everything in his graveyard, but there is the possibility that he will be able to go off this turn, which is very important because if he passes the turn back, Anderson Leclerc is presenting lethal right now. That Engineered Explosives can potentially make it so that Anderson is no longer presenting lethal by getting the Walking Ballista off the table before he has an opportunity to pump more mana into it and attack. But I think Eric would just prefer to win right now.
Yeah, the tricky balance there is that you could use this Engineer Explosives to eliminate the Walking Ballista. Its converted mana cost is 0. However, if you play the Scrap Trawler, it's only got a toughness of 2, and this Walking Ballista does have 4 counters on it.
Yeah, so he's going to have to get the Ballista off the table before he casts the Scrap Trawler right now.
And it looks like that is going to be the case. We are going to... Oh, no, actually, we were just sacrificing that one for mana, so that's not the intent. It's now Chromatic Star that comes down, adding another bit of mana. We're up to 3 of this colorless mana at the moment, sacrificing that Chromatic Star. Now, not for the mana ability to where you're able to cycle one, any color of mana into another, but just for the Krark Clan Ironworks, you do still draw a card, though, because those abilities are separate on Chromatic Star, as opposed to Chromatic Sphere.
Absolutely. That's a really important note, and it's one of the reasons why Star is such a powerful top deck when you're in the process of comboing, similar to Terrarion with that trigger. So Eric here has an interesting decision, because I think he's deciding whether or not he wants to cast the Engineered Explosives for 0 and then use its activated ability, or if he wants to maintain resources and try to go off through that Walking Ballista, which could be exceptionally difficult because that means that 2 different Scrap Trawlers could be dealt with via the counters that are on that Ballista. If he passes the turn back, he risks just losing the game. So right now, Eric, kind of this is the decision that is going to either win or lose him the game. And it's difficult to know exactly how much mana he has access to. He doesn't even know how much mana he will have access to because he'll be drawing more cards once he starts playing these things. And if he goes for it now, there's absolutely the possibility that he just fizzles, which is, a term to say that he starts trying to combo off and does not successfully do so. But there's also a chance that if he passes the turn, the game ends.
And like you said, on the right side of the battlefield, that Wurmcoil Engine and that Walking Ballista with no other additions are representing a lethal amount of damage because they can attack in for 10. It's a 6/6 and a 4/4. And then that Walking Ballista is able to just remove its 4 counters for the final points necessary. Looks like we're going to sacrifice our Mind Stone. That is going to get us another couple of mana, bringing it up to 5. We have decided maybe not.
Yeah. He didn't take his hand off it.
Chess rules. It's chess rules. All right, running through this one. This Krark Clan Ironworks is a deck that has just a remarkable amount of options at any given time. It's going to be Terrarion that comes down. We are going to immediately sacrifice that one. It's going to be going back up to 4 mana, drawing a card. It's another copy of Engineer Explosives. The one thing concerning to me right now is the lack of cards that actually draw in his hand. I think his main tool is that, Scrap Trawler, which would be able to get back a couple of things. But yeah, he is focusing on let's play Engineer Explosives for 0. Let's fire off that ability. Let's destroy all non-land permanents with converted mana cost 0. And that is going to include the Walking Ballista, which is going to knock Eric English down to 10. And we're going to now go for another copy of Engineer Explosives, go back up to 4 mana, and it looks like he is going to take a whirl at it this turn.
Yeah, so now he's going to get the Scrap Trawler trigger, so he goes down to this mana, gets the star back. The star gets sacrificed, it's going to draw him a card, put him up to 4 mana. Then he's going to get back an Explosives or an Opal, depending on what he has access to. He does have the Opal. It looks like he found an Ichor Wellspring, and I think that's probably enough to do it. So Eric English very happy to get out of the woods here and win this Game 1 in a matchup that I'm sure he feels is very favorable, especially in Game 1.
We're going to keep drawing some cards. We get back a Chromatic Sphere, and now we are just looking to represent a loop. We've got another copy of Krark Clan Ironworks, though it looks like a lot of those draws were lands, which is not what he's really looking for, but we do find another Mox Opal. We're going to go ahead and find another copy of Scrap Trawler. This is another step in the right direction with 2 copies of Krark Clan Ironworks, 2 copies of Scrap Trawler. A lot of potential options there. Playing down the other copy of Krark Clan Ironworks would allow him to restart the chain.
Yeah, and now with the double Scrap Trawler and that Ironworks that costs 4 in hand, it means he's going to get 2 triggers off of each of these things that he sacrifices. So that, when he sacrifices that Krark Clan Ironworks, it can turn Wellspring and another artifact. When he sacrifices that Wellspring, it'll return 2 1-mana artifacts, and so on and so forth.
Yep, looks like we're going to get a Terrarian and a Chromatic Star off of that. Those will both be castable. They'll produce mana, they'll draw cards. And now we are just churning through the deck with this Quark-Clarion Ironworks. That decision point early on, how do you want to go about it? He finds a way to do really both, you know?
Yeah, and that's what he needed to do, because if he ends up passing the turn back, there's a reasonable likelihood that he ends up getting disrupted in some way and may not actually be able to combo on the following turn.
Look, you can see Anderson twirling his thumbs.
Yeah.
He's patient, you know? He can wait. Taking a look down at the other scores, there has not been a whole lot of progression on the other tables either. It's still 1-1 on table C. It is 1-0 on table B. And this table A is looking to declare its first game win of the match.
Yes. So at this rate, Eric English with more mana than he would ever know what to do with.
Yeah, at this point, even Emrakul's on the board. Not that they're running that card anymore.
Yeah, they've found better ways to win nowadays.
Better ways to win than an Emrakul? Not a chance.
Pyrite Spellbomb. It's so much more elegant.
It's elegant. I'll give you that one. Elegance is definitely a key factor there. All right, these two Scrap Trawlers churning through the deck, enabling all of these cards to be coming back from the graveyard. We have got 5 green mana. We have got 20. And yet we are going to represent it. That is enough. Eric English says, I've got it. Can you stop me with no mana, no options, and Tron? The answer is no. Anderson Leclerc picks up his cards, and we're going to be getting ready for a game 2. We're heading to the sideboard. Let's try and find some answers in there. The other tables continue to fight it out, and these are the last 2 undefeated teams in the room. They both entered in this hall this morning. 8 wins, 0 losses. Oh, we're back to it. It's Eldrazi and Taxes, and take a look at that Smuggler's Copter alongside Eldrazi Displacer, Thought-Knot Seer, and Chalice of the Void. Now we're getting the Eldrazi side of this Eldrazi and Taxes deck. On the other side, Dryad Arbor, Slippery Bogle, and a Core Spirit Dancer. But no enchantments. That means that there's a handshake. I have a suspicion that ability from Eldrazi Displacer had something to do with it.
Yeah, I think Chalice of the Void may have actually been the major player there. It looked like there was a Chalice on 1, and when you're playing against that Bogle stack, especially in post-boarded games when they're against an aggressive strategy, the vast majority of the deck costs 1 mana, and there's a pretty good chance that Alex just found himself with a hand where he couldn't cast a single spell.
All right, well, jumping into Table B, it's Matthew Hoffman up against Christian Baker. This is that Storm versus 4-color Shadow match we were talking about. We've got a Mishra's Bauble in the graveyard alongside a Verdant Catacombs. Keep an eye out for when that number of card types becomes 4, because that is going to be important for the Delirium ability of both Traverse the Ovenwald and Grim Flayer. Otherwise, its Thing in the Ice gets hit by Fatal Push, just pushing a block of ice slightly more into the water.
It slides easily. So an interesting thing we see in the graveyard here is that Matthew Hoffman played that Bauble and sacrificed it before he sacrificed that Verdant Catacombs. This is an interesting play you can make with these types of decks, where on your first turn you look at the top card of your library with the Mishra's Bauble, and if you want to keep that card and draw it, you don't sacrifice your fetch land. And if you want a different card, or if you don't want to draw that card, then you do sacrifice your fetch land. So just a little small bit of library manipulation that ends up paying off dividends over the course of a long tournament.
The old Pseudo-Scry.
Yes.
All right, well, it's going to be Collective Brutality. Now it looks like there's going to be no escalation, no targets on the board. The life total's not really that important, especially for a deck that's trying to have as low of a life total as possible. And we take away that Manamorphose. Pyromancer Ascension hits the battlefield. This is that enchantment that we mentioned earlier. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery, if it shares a name with one in your graveyard, you put a counter on it. Once you have assembled 2 of those counters, all of your spells start doubling up. You cast down a Poetic Ritual, bam. You get 6 mana.
Yeah. Manamorphose feels real nice. You get
Manamorphose.
4 mana and you draw 2 cards.
Ooh. All right, it's going to be a 1/1 Death Shadow. 1/1's for 1. That's powerful magic.
Oh, yeah.
It's going to be another copy of Pyromancer's Ascension. we did say that you want to cast redundant spells, but actually going for the enchantment, maybe not where you want it to be, though. If you do get both of these active, 3 spells.
Things start getting crazy, yeah.
3 spells. Triple bolt. That's, oh man, I want to see it happen.
I want to see like triple gifts ungiven.
That's obscene. Wow. At that point, I think the gifts are being given.
Yes.
At this point, you're getting what you want. All right, we're going to attack in. We have lost a little bit of life, so it's going to be a hit in for 4. That's going to knock Christian Baker down to 16. A Tarmogoyf joins the battlefield, and we have got creature, instant, sorcery, land, artifact. All right, they're going to do us a favor there. 5 types. It's going to be a 5/6 Tarmogoyf. Has power and toughness +1 equal to the number of card types in the graveyards.
Yeah, so an interesting decision point there last turn for Matthew Hoffman. He chose to leave open the Stubborn Denial, which I like, instead of casting the other Tarmogoyf. Though if he had cast the other Tarmogoyf, he would be presenting lethal on this turn right now. Though he didn't know that he was going to be drawing that Thoughtseize.
Oh no, and now Christian Baker empty-handed up against a Tarmogoyf swinging for 5. This Death Shadow swinging for 7. Another Tarmogoyf joins the field. We're down to 5. No cards in hand. It is going to take something really special from Storm to get through this.
Yeah, I mean, hypothetically, there's the possibility that Christian is able to just chain a bunch of Manamorphose into a couple cantrips into Grape Shot and maybe get 7 damage out of that.
Oh, I think that might have been... Because you could go... Oh, no, it's Empty the Warrens. It looked a little bit like one to me, but yeah, something like a Serum Visions into a Manamorphose. But that's going to be no good. Pyromancer Ascension, but we have not ascended in this game, and that means that Matthew Hoffman is going to take his second game against this. Now it all comes down to Eric English versus Anderson Leclerc. Krark Clan Ironworks up against Tron. Anderson on the play leads with a Relic of Progenitus. A little bit of graveyard hate, nicely effective against this Ironworks deck.
The Relic of Progenitus is the best card that is available to Anderson Sinclair in this matchup out of his sideboard. His sideboard not particularly well suited for the matchup. Against combo strategies, you don't want to be a Tron player. So Eric English has probably been very happy to be in this A seat throughout this weekend. For some reason or another, we've been seeing a lot of Tron decks sitting at A.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Mox Opal comes down for Eric English. Off of that Ancient Stirrings. Could play it this turn, though I don't think it would be active. Of course, this deck not quite as capable of producing that Metalcraft in the early parts of the game, so he's just going to save that one in hand. There's a lot less ways to interact with cards in the hand from Tron than there are ways to interact with cards on the battlefield.
Yeah, and you know, the later stages of the game, once you have Krark Clan Ironworks in play, Mox Opal is essentially a Black Lotus.
Yep.
And that you're recurring over and over.
Koronek Star comes down to the battlefield. Relic of Progenitus alongside it. The timing of this relic is also going to be an interesting factor for me, because when this deck really starts going, if you've got Krark Clan Ironworks, there's a lot of ability to respond to the Relic of Progenitus. If you have got a Scrap Trawler, you know, you start sacrificing things, you get all these triggered abilities in response. The timing with this relic is something that's always interested me when it comes down to it.
Yeah, a lot of the time when you watch somebody going off the Scrap Trawler, you'll see somebody pop a relic, and the other player, like you said, uses Scrap Trawler triggers to put the necessary pieces of the combo into their hand, lets the relic trigger resolve, or the relic activation resolve, exiles their graveyard, and then just continues to go off. The resilience of the Krark Clan Ironworks combo is often on full display when people are trying to beat it with graveyard hate like Relic of Progenitus.
We are going to see Naturaltron. Powers up.
It's not the best feeling.
I haven't done it too often myself, so the couple of times that I have, it was pretty great, but I don't have an enormous amount of experience with especially turn 3 Naturaltrons. I think I've played just as much Mono Bluetron as I have green.
I've probably played more Mono Bluetron, to be honest. So there was a while where I played a lot of Mono Bluetron on Magic Online.
It's a fun deck.
It is a really fun deck.
All right, Terrarion comes down to the battlefield. It does enter the battlefield tapped when that gets sacrificed. If it does, you will be drawing a card. Otherwise, just kind of hanging out for the moment, taking a nap.
And Terrarion, like Chromatic Star, has the triggered ability when it goes to the graveyard, you draw a card. So you do not need to activate it in order to get that extra card there.
All right, we've got 7 mana, a Chromatic Star, and we are looking to see what we can do with it. Relic of Progenitus still hanging out and about. The graveyard of Eric English is empty right now. Double Tower as well. Yep. All right, it's going to be Karn. We're going to see a negate target that one. All right, that means that Karn is now off the field, not entering into play. That would have been able to start either eliminating some of these permanents or attacking the hand of Eric English. Now, he does also have a Nature's Claim in hand. There's still 3 mana remaining for Leclerc, but it looks like he might just be passing the turn back. Not a whole action to be had. So, Grove of the Burn Willows, the last remaining hope, could be looking at using this Nature's Claim on the Relic right now.
Yeah, I think Eric may want to try to Nature's Claim this Relic. It will produce card disadvantage for him because Anderson will be able to sacrifice it in response, thus drawing a card when Eric English is spending a card. However, not having to fight through that piece of graveyard interaction could make going off a possibility on the following turn for Eric English.
And Nature's Claim is such a popular card in these Card Clan Ironworks. It answers just about everything that you could want. Answers aggressive decks by gaining yourself life. It answers Rest in Peace. It answers Relic. It answers, I mean, really just anything.
Yeah. Eric also needs to be careful, however, because if you see this Chromatic Star on Anderson Leclerc's side of the table, he's not sacrificing that. Normally, the Tron players are very aggressive about sacrificing pieces of that variety, and that may lead us to believe that he's actually holding on to some interactive card that costs green mana to cast.
Ooh, what kind of options do we have access to from Anderson Leclerc?
It looks like he has 4 Nature's Claim himself.
A lot of nature.
Yes.
A lot of nature. All right, well, there it is. That Nature's Claim is going to head after the Mox Opal. That leaves us with just the Terrarion and the Darksteel Citadel. That is going to go to the graveyard, and the nice part here is that that exiles that Mox Opal, so it cannot be recurred with something like a Scrap Trawler.
Yeah, and that will, if Eric doesn't have another Mox Opal or is unable to draw into another one during his combo, that will severely neuter his ability to create tons and tons of mana on the following turn.
He draws into a Cart Clan Ironworks. He could play that one down this turn. A Buried Rune enters the battlefield, and that last card in hand was not quite able to see what it was. Looked a bit like a Scrap Trawler?
I think it was a Scrap Trawler. So here, Anderson, a wise decision to get that Mox Opal off the battlefield. If he had not done so, Eric English would have a pretty simple path to going off on this turn.
Looks like we might be firing it off anyway. He's going to gain 2 mana. He would have the ability to sacrifice his Darksteel Citadel and then put down enough to play the Scrap Heap Scrounger, though, or
the Scrap Heap Trawler.
Yeah,
or
the
Scrap Trawler, rather. Sorry.
I know, a lot of standard lately. All right, Darksteel Citadel, it's going to bring us to 4, and I think the last cards in hand is Scrap Trawler and a Nature's Claim. Nature's Claim. It's all over the place. Nature's here. It wants it all. 10 mana available for Leclerc. Last time his Karn got negated. This time it's a Thought-Knot Seer. That's going to come down. Oh, it was Ancient Stirrings, actually. So that is now exiled. That was going to be a really big card for digging for any of the combo pieces. And now we are drawing off the top of the deck, and a Buried Rune is going to be joined by Ichor Wellspring.
That's just about as good as a draw could get here. So that's going to draw him a card entering the battlefield. It's going to replace the mana that it made. It's going to draw him another card. Then it's returning this Terrarion, which will net mana and draw another card. And from here, with that Buried Ruin on the battlefield, that means that Eric can then trade that Buried Ruin in for another Ichor Wellspring, and he might just be home free.
He actually drew a Chromatic Star as well, which means that he'll have the ability to cast that Ancient Strings he drew. Before, he tapped his Grove of the Burn Willows to do it, so he did not have the option. Now with that star, he could, instead of sacrificing it to the Cart Clan Ironworks, just cycle one of this generic mana through it and get the Ancient Stirrings down. And looks like that might be the case. Oh man, these draws have lined up nicely for Eric English. Ancient Stirrings. Let's take a look at the top 5. Find a colorless card, put it in our hand. That is a pretty nice swath of options.
Yeah, I see an Opal and a Scrap Trawler.
Mox Opal it is. You've got the Scrap Trawler and the Cart Clan Ironworks. You said it before. This card is now functionally a Black Lotus. It comes down to the battlefield, it taps for a mana, and then you sacrifice it for another 2, and you're able to keep recurring it with that Scrap Trawler as well. Chromatic Star is going to come down to the battlefield when that sacrifices. Mox Opal is back. We're going to draw a 3rd copy of Krark-Clan Ironworks. Mox Opal activates, adds more of that mana. It's going to sacrifice once more. Buried Ruin still an option, so that's going to be able to actually restart this chain, digging up one of these cards.
Yeah, and each of these Krark-Clan Ironworks actually will net mana in the long term, because when he sacrifices one, he'll be able to return the Ichor Wellspring, which will then return a Terrarion, or a Chromatic Star, which will then return a Mox Opal, and yeah.
He's doing it right now.
This is how it happens.
Keep in mind that Buried Ruin, it does cost 2 mana to activate, and it returns an artifact from your graveyard to your hand. So, as Eric English is running through this combo, once he decides he maybe needs to restart with that copy of Krark-Clan Ironworks, it's only going to cost him 2 mana to do so, and you see him leaving this Buried Ruin untapped, and that's going to let him restart that chain anytime.
Yeah, leaving that Buried Ruin untapped is very wise here. It means that even if the top of his library is especially unkind, he will still be able to continue this combo.
I want to highlight something. The last turn that we saw was Anderson Leclerc, and what he did was he cast a Thought-Knot Seer and eliminated the last card in Eric English's hand. And now he's sitting with a grip full of cards. He's got Krark-Clan Ironworks, Scrap Trawler, 3 green mana, 6 generic, a Buried Ruin. This could not have gone better.
Yeah, Ichor Wellspring really was the perfect card to come off the top here for Eric English.
Wow.
And as Anderson, you have to feel a little bit frustrated. Here you are, you've only had 5 turns, you had Relic of Regenitus, your best piece of disruption in the matchup, you had a Thought-Knot Seer to pluck a card out of your opponent's hand, you exiled graveyards, you Nature's Claim to Eric English, and you left him with no cards in hand and no graveyard, and he just went off and beat you.
What more can you do? That's just, he's now back up on these Mox Opals, so you didn't even actually get rid of that one. That was a temporary setback. The Chromatic Stars are still underway. The Scrap Trawler's around. Just everything has gone wrong for Anderson Leclerc. He's been spending all weekend probably trying to dodge this matchup, and now he is seeing why.
Yeah, and I mean, for what it's worth, he was undefeated coming into this round, so
yeah.
he's still doing pretty well in this tournament, though this is not the matchup he was hoping to run into at all. One thing I would also like to point out, though, about this Ironworks deck is that if you want to be beating it, if you want to be interacting with it, the way to do that is not necessarily through discard. It's not necessarily through things that exile a graveyard once. It's with cards like Leyline of the Void. It's with cards like Rest in Peace, and it's with Counter Magic. If you can counter the Krark-Clan Ironworks, this deck does not do much. So decks with Counter Magic tend to do a little bit better against this than they do against other combo strategies. As sideboard plans go, things like Surgical Extraction, things like Leyline of the Void, things like Rest in Peace, these are the cards that you need to beat this kind of deck. Discard spells, things like Relic, those cards are not at their best in this matchup. And I think in a team tournament, when you need to divvy up the graveyard hate, it's important that in an environment with a lot of Krark-Clan Ironworks, that you're doing so in a way that gives everybody a graveyard hate card that is especially strong in this particular matchup.
If you're wondering what's happening on the battlefield, we are sacrificing things to Krark-Clan Ironworks, generating a ton of mana every time that we start off with either CMC 3, 2, 1. It's just continually chains down. So Ichor Wellspring, it draws a card. When it goes away, we're going to draw a card. That's going to bring back a Chromatic Star. That's going to generate some mana and draw a card. That's going to bring back Mox Opal. That's going to come in and be a Black Lotus. Bam, you've drawn a couple of cards. You restart the chain. Keep on cruising through it. Now you've got Inventor's Fair and enough mana to activate it. Once you grab, this might be just getting a Mere Retriever. And then you are just locked in.
Yeah, once you have this Mere Retriever, then it's just a matter of time before you hit that Pyrite Spellbomb. When you hit that Pyrite Spellbomb, you can set up a loop with the Scrap Trawler, and you just deal your opponent 2 damage at a time until they die.
Now the only question is, did Eric English accidentally sideboard out the Pyrite Spellbomb?
No, I saw it once when he cast an Ancient Stirrings.
Well, that took away all the tension.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. I mean, the odds of it were nothing. But All right, that means that we are going to be fully assembled in this combo. It is Mirror Retriever happening. We're going to lose this Ichor Wellspring, and now we are just running through this combo to a point of demonstrating the loop. And once we can show that Pyrite Spellbomb, it's going to be Anderson Leclerc picking up his cards unless something drastic happens.
Yeah, I mean, the only way Anderson Leclerc still has a way of winning this game is if Eric accidentally, messes up in some way.
He realizes that he missed his train and he's got to go.
Yeah. He, has, an emergency. He needs to leave.
Let's hope not.
Yeah, I also hope not. For his sake, or if he just messes up comboing. He sacrifices the wrong piece at the wrong time. I don't think Eric is going to do that. Eric is somebody who is a master of eternal formats. If anybody knows him well, they'll know that Eric is the type of person who feels very comfortable piloting legacy and vintage combo strategies that make this incredibly complicated combo deck look like Duplos, So Eric English, I highly doubt we're going to see him mess this one up right now.
So for him, this is just a walk in the park.
Oh yeah, this is just his element.
All right, good morning. My name is Nicolai.
All right, so we have got an incredible amount of mana running through this Chromatic Star, getting this Mox Opal, continuing to get maximum value every single time. Sure, you could try running this one through, but keep getting that Mox Opal, keep generating that mana. Another notable thing is actually I'm a little bit, I don't think it actually matters, but I'm slightly surprised that he hasn't just produced a blue mana with this Mox Opal because he's got a negate in hand. And you never know, maybe Anderson Leclerc gets you with just some piece of tech that you've never seen, Mindbreak Trap, all of a sudden, right? You never know. Out of the board. I might be a little bit tempted just to, actually we did end up getting that blue mana, so is holding that one up, just getting that little bit of safety buffer for this negate. It's not likely going to matter, but now you're just certain.
Yeah, the hard lock, the...
We will be using match slips today.
All right, and it looks like, so what we're seeing right now is that we're casting this. What we're sort of over generating mana right now for this. While this spell is on the stack and you're at the point of paying the cost of the mana, using the mana ability of Krark-Clan Ironworks to sacrifice both Mirror Retriever and Scrap Trawler. In doing so, what these are able to do is it's not on the stack. It means that both of these cards are able to see each other, and you can have the Scrap Trawler bring back the Mirror Retriever. You can have the Mirror Retriever bring back something else. You can have this and bring back the Scrap Trawler. So now both the Mirror Retriever and the Scrap Trawler will be going back to the hand, and you can just continue running through that combo of drawing cards and reiterating the Scrap Trawler.
Yes. So you need to be able to respond to your own mana ability on the star here.
And
timing issue can be
Double check that your name is
a little bit complicated or convoluted. I highly suggest people at home go and look up the Mirror Retriever Scrap Trawler loops if they're interested in what's happening here. They get complicated. I don't want to mislead people.
I mean, you know who wrote a couple of really good articles on playing Krark-Clan Ironworks?
Matt Ness.
Matt Ness.
And he won a lot with that deck.
All right, well, that means that we have now got Krark-Clan Ironworks taking the team to a victory here in round 9, an early one. Now only one undefeated team in the room, but that is going to go ahead and do it for the first match. Now we are going to have more Magic coming at you here in round 9. I'm TJ Rogers, this is Jake Van Lunen, and we'll be right back. back here to round 9 at Grand Prix Detroit. TJ Rogers with Jake Van Lunen. And as we were getting ready for some Time Walk Magic, I wanted to take a little bit of a moment to discuss some of the decks that we expected to see and some of the decks that we've been surprised by. Because heading into this event, we were really expecting a lot of this blue-white control deck that has been hugely popular. But we've seen a little bit of a variation on that both yesterday and we're about to see some of it here today.
Yeah, that's one of the things that surprised me a lot. This blue-white deck is a deck that is in the wheelhouse of a lot of the best players in the world. And not only that, but when you look at win percentages across Magic Online, across recent Grand Prix, this is one of the best decks you could possibly play. And even so, people have chosen to use those cards, the key cards in that deck, to play a Jeskai strategy instead of playing blue-white, or to try other decks also. And I think that speaks volumes to people's expectation that the blue-white deck was going to be everywhere. And I think a lot of people picked up the Jeskai deck because they felt like the option of having burn instead of simply removal that talks about creatures and cannot go to a planeswalker or go to a face led people to believe that Jeskai deck would be favored in that matchup.
Well, there's only one way to find out. We don't have them up against each other, but it is Krark-Clan Ironworks Human and a blue-white variant up against each other. Let's head on down to some Time Walk Magic. Let's see it happen. And we'll be kicking off here with Jacob Wilson up against Brandon Ayers. Formerly teammates, actually. They were teammates for Pro Tour Ixalan. And we have got Noble Hierarch as well as Pyrite Spellbomb on the battlefield. That Spellbomb normally part of sort of the finishing combo from this Krark-Clan Ironworks, but one of the reasons why it is so effective in this deck is you can use it now.
Yeah, you can simply use it to, alongside one of your Chromatic Stars or Spheres or Terrarians to get a small creature off the table. You can simply cycle it, though cycling it can be dangerous if you were only playing one copy because you might find it being exiled at some point or another. It works as part of the combo and then is the finisher for the combo, and as a result, it can be pretty powerful.
Ichor Wellspring joins the battlefield, draws a card, leaving up that Pyrite Spellbomb. It's back over to Brandon Ayers in his hand. He's got access to both Kitesail Freebooter and Meddling Mage. Now, that could be an interesting one, but he needs to be careful that Meddling Mage, while it can shut down the Krark-Clan Ironworks, there is the Pyrite Spellbomb on the battlefield right now that would be prepared to remove it. It's going to be Kitesail Freebooter. We see Galvanic Blast as well as Chromatic Star, Engineer Explosives, and that appears to be a Mind Stone. This Galvanic Blast is, I think, maybe one of those concessions to the sideboard choices that we were talking about previously. If you look, teammate Ben Friedman is on that Jeskai variant, which means that he is using the Lightning Bolts that have been at least a little bit more commonplace. Now we see Jacob Wilson audibling to Galvanic Blast.
Yeah, and I mean, Galvanic Blast may just be an upgrade for what it's worth.
I've cast a lot of Galvanic Blasts in my day. It's a fun card. A little bit of that and Shrapnel Blast.
Yeah, we've seen a lot of Thought-Knot Seers this weekend. That's all I'm saying.
That's true. That's a good point. All right, Kitesail Freebooter. It's got a Chromatic Star underneath it. It's going to be wearing that one like a shiny badge. It's the new sheriff of this battlefield. And it's back over to Jacob Wilson. Ichor Wellspring, Pyrite Spellbomb, that Galvanic Blast, an option as a removal spell. Ended up not taking that one. Oftentimes you'll see this Kitesail Freebooter eliminate the removal.
I think that Brandon Ayers recognizes that this match is going to be about preventing Jacob Wilson from comboing and just applying as much pressure as possible. He also sees that Jacob Wilson doesn't have access to red mana right now. Chromatic Star was Jacob's only form of red mana. So by taking that Chromatic Star, it means that Jacob Wilson, not only is he not going to be able to cast this Galvanic Blast from his hand, but he also would not be able to use the activated ability off the Pyrite Spellbomb.
And now we do see him sacrificing that Pyrite Spellbomb, just trying to draw another card. He no longer sees its usefulness as a threat on the battlefield. Plus, the Galvanic Blast is a known factor. Grove of the Burn Willows, however, is the land for the turn. We're going to throw down Engineered Explosives on 2. That is threatening to eliminate this Kitesail Freebooter while also retaining this Galvanic Blast in hand as a castable card.
Yeah, and getting this Engineered Explosives down on 2 is on this turn is even more important than Jacob knew it would be. I think he's actually getting this card in underneath the Gaddock Teague that's in Brandon Ayers' hand.
Oh my. Gaddock Teague would shut that down very quickly. It's a powerful card, 2 mana, 2/2. That says that non-creature spells with either X costs in their mana cost or converted mana cost 4 or greater cannot be cast. That shuts down not only Engineered Explosives, but also Krark-Clan Ironworks. It's going to be Phantasmal Image that comes down, copying that Noble Hierarch. Kitesail Freebooter able to attack in for 3. Whew, living up to that Sheriff name.
Yeah, and Brandon Ayers, again, a wise play here. It looks like his hand is just flooded with 2-drops as castable spells on that turn. He doesn't want to just play into this Engineered Explosives on Jacob's side of the table. So instead of doing that, he's able to continue to advance his board state, develop his mana by simply casting a Phantasmal Image, copying the Noble Hierarch, and now that illusion has a converted mana cost of 1. So when that Engineered Explosives is cracked, only the Kitesail Freebooter would die.
The nice part, too, is that it really incentivizes Jacob to crack that one because the Kitesail Freebooter is now attacking for just significantly more than it would have otherwise, making it actually a threat that you can't really wait for.
Yeah, the other thing is that Brandon, I believe, has Kambal in hand, and if he's able to get that down into the battlefield and protect it from something like Galvanic Blast, then he's going to find himself in a really nice spot.
Scrap Trawler hits the battlefield alongside that Engineered Explosives and the Ichor Wellspring. These are some of really the heavy hitters of the Krark-Clan Ironworks deck starting to come together. What currently is the situation is there's no way yet to really start sacrificing them and generating that mana. I think I do see Anafenza the foremost.
Yeah, and Anafenza the foremost, not only is it a 4/4 for 3 mana, so a very impressive body that gets around this Engineered Explosives for 2, but it also says that whenever a creature is put into the graveyard from play, we're exiling it instead, and that means that Mirror Retrievers and Scrap Trawlers that are trying to be part of that combo are going to not work in that capacity.
Oh, yes.
So the artifacts that are being sacrificed will still work with the Scrap Trawler, but Mirror Retriever would not work.
And now we are seeing the Galvanic Blast gets fired off. That is at least one of these interactive spells from Jacob Wilson that is now out of the picture. The only one remains is Engineered Explosives. If Brandon Ayers can find a way to have him sacrifice this Explosives, then Meddling Mage and Gaddock Teague in the hand, I think you saw, could both become very powerful options to shut this down.
Yeah, I actually believe that I saw Kambal, Console of Allocation, and if he's able to Kambal,
There it is.
I don't know if he'll have time to do it, but if he's able to do that, then he's going to be feeling pretty good about his chances.
And look at this. We see him use that mana, fire off the Engineered Explosives, eliminates the Ichor Wellspring. That brings back the Engineered Explosives because the Scrap Trawler plays that one down for 1 with some of the remaining mana, fires it off, and eliminates the Noble Hierarchs. Brandon Ayers just lost it all.
Yeah, beautiful play there from Jacob Wilson, understanding all of the ins and outs of this Scrap Trawler. It's not just a combo piece. It also allows you to interact on a level that it just makes things very difficult for the opponent. By continuing to recur this Engineered Explosives against a human's opponent, Jacob has all but locked up the game.
And that's going to be it. Jacob Wilson, not even a combo to be seen, just becomes a recursive Engineered Explosives deck, eliminating the 1-drops, the 2-drops, and his 3/2 Scrap Trawler presents the ability to get it done with no additional mana from Brandon Ayers. He decides to scoop it up. He's got games 2 and 3 to focus on. Wow. It is so cool to see that deck interact on its level that is not the combo.
Yeah, and I think that's definitely one of the most enjoyable games as a viewer I've watched of Krark-Clan Ironworks deck. And Jacob Wilson, just a brilliant player, really understanding how all of his cards can work in every capacity.
So it's a Meddling Mage on the stack. Path to Exile eliminates this Phantasmal Image, and it is humans up against blue-white. On the left side, we've got an Aether Vial on 2. Thalia's Lieutenant with 2 counters on it. Noble Hierarch, no counters currently, and it looks like we've actually got another copy of Noble Hierarch off to the side. Now this one does have a counter from that Thalia's Lieutenant. Meddling Mage on the stack. We're going to get to name a card here against these blue-whites. Now this is true blue-white, not Jeskai, which has a couple of warriors or soldiers. I think that's from a Timely Reinforcements, as well as a Stony Silence, which is why we did not see this come off of the Aether Vial.
Yeah, now the Stony Silence means that counter magic can be a little bit better. The Meddling Mage there, that's a very interesting choice because he has to decide whether or not he wants to name a card like Supreme Verdict, a card like Terminus, a card like Wrath of God. And the blue-white decks now have enough options that in terms of board sweeping effects, that it can be difficult to decide which of those cards is correct to name at a specific point, especially if you don't have the necessary information from something like a Kitesail Freebooter.
So we've got these 2/1/1s that are trying to hold back the onslaught, though they're really kind of on chump blocking duty up against something like this Thalia's Lieutenant, and it's going to be Ghost Quarter as well, eliminating that. No basics left. The bright side is that this blue-white deck has eliminated most of the mana. There are still the 2 Noble Hierarchs, however, but Rob Pisano's got Mantis Rider. You would say, all right, well, he's got the 3 mana. He does not have the red mana to actually cast this Mantis Rider. He does draw into a Thalia, however, which would make non-basic lands, as well as any creatures, enter the battlefield tapped.
It's also just a decent threat. You know, it's a warm body.
Yeah. It's a first strike in 3/2. Doesn't even trade with those soldiers because the first strike. Thalia's Lieutenant is going to go up to being a 5/5 alongside this. Now, because it's got the attack from the 2 Noble Hierarchs, it's actually attacking for 7. A quick block there, and it's right back to Alan Wu, who's going to draw his card for the turn. You can always see this, by the way. I think I know what that Meddling Mage is naming.
Yeah, so do I. I think that if that Meddling Mage was not naming a particular card, we would have seen that card cast.
And you could actually, I was about to, leading into that, I was going to say you can always tell these decks with the Miracles. You see how they change the way that they even draw cards. Cavern of Souls comes down. It's going to name Human. That produces the red mana. Mantis Rider is on the field. The beatdowns are continuing to happen. But you can see, we have seen some very careful drawing from all these decks with Terminus somewhere in the deck. Take a look, peek a bit before it ever touches the hand. Very important.
So now an interesting decision point here. Rob Pisano deciding how he wants to line up his attacks. By just attacking with the Mantis Rider, you're attacking with a 5-power flyer, which means that it's bigger than a Celestial Colonnade, which would be threatening to block. But by just attacking with the Thalia's Lieutenant, you're absolutely forcing a block with that soldier there. And then you can set up for an all-out swing on the following turn, where your opponent putting all of their mana into a single Celestial Colonnade activation could allow you to punish them significantly with something like a Dismember, which Rob does apparently have in hand.
One thing that we saw a lot yesterday was players, especially some Human players, really paying respect to the potential of Settle the Wreckage in the new face of Modern in these blue-white decks. They are often only at a couple copies of it, and what we know is that Alan Wu only has the 1 copy. Is this the kind of situation where when you know that they've got Supreme Verdict and Terminus and all these other options, do you pay any heed to Settle the Wreckage, or are you really looking for an obvious sign that it's there?
So I like to have a reason to believe that they have that card. I want to know that they have something else that they could have done with their mana. I really don't like playing around singletons or 2-ofs in matchups like this when I'm the aggressor if I don't have reason to believe that my opponent has that card. I think that by playing around those things too much, you're giving your opponents extra time. And if you're giving your opponents extra time, you're often giving them an opportunity to win the game.
Teferi, Hero of Dominaria, is going to come down for Alan Wu. Loyalty counters on it. When it pluses up, it'll be up to 5. Untapping some of those lands, making Celestial Colonnade once more an option, and drawing yet another card, a Path to Exile among them. That means that we could be looking at Activate Celestial Colonnade, block, and then a Path to Exile. That's a really good position for Alan Wu to be in.
Yeah, though the board on the left side, Rob Pisano's board, is getting quite wide. And if Rob Pisano is willing to just go for it, if you will, we could quickly see this Teferi fall and the game end on the following turn.
It's going to be Mantis Rider, Thalia, as well as Meddling Mage and Thalia's Lieutenant. One thing to note is you saw before, you mentioned that Celestial Colonnade is unlikely to actually kill a creature because of the Dismember in hand. There is another Colonnade for a future turn, but at least it would maintain that Rob Pisano would likely only lose 1 creature to this Path to Exile. And that is going to be it. It's the attack all out, and we might be, I don't know if we're pointing these all at Teferi, all at Alan Wu, quite what our alignment is, because we just really saw him press forward. I imagine there was some kind of verbal communication, but the way that he's indicating makes me think that he's really attacking Teferi.
I like this attack a lot. I feel like there's a
There it is, the
some
dismember.
necessity here to be the aggressor.
On the Colonnade, we're going to activate that one for white mana, and we are going to end up losing it. This Path to Exile, however, is going to eliminate one of these. The Path to... Ooh. I got to say, I'm a little bit surprised that he didn't try and take out the Meddling Mage, if that's naming Terminus. But his consideration might be that he just gets to minus the Teferi Hero of Dominaria if it survives. It was all going face. Alan Wu is down to 6. If he's going to minus this one, get rid of the Meddling Mage, and now Terminus.
Wow.
Oh my, all of these creatures to the bottom of Rob Pisano's library. The Aether Vial still active. And then a Field of Ruin is going to eliminate this. Cavern of Souls, only blue and white mana. It means that now Mantis Riders off the top are not significant threats against Teferi and Alan's life total. Oh my goodness, this is just a good spot to be in.
Yeah, Alan Wu now with Teferi on the board, no creatures on the opposing side of the table. Rob Pisano, he chose to send everything at Alan Wu's face and was punished for not getting that Teferi off the table in the process.
A champion of the Paris joining the battlefield, trying to pick up the scraps of his previous military that has now seemingly left him behind. It's going to be the attack in for 4 from Alan Wu. He's got 4 mana remaining, as well as this Teferi. And the last card in hand, he's going to get to untap them. And that actually, by playing that land, that means that he does have enough mana to activate this Colonnade as a blocker. Rob Pisano picks up on that. He's going to pass it back to Alan Wu, who now gets to hold on to a Cryptic Command as a little bit of a safety valve just in case. And it is going to be Celestial Colonnade continuing to get some work done. Ooh, maybe not. Search for Azcanta. And, oh man, are we looking at just the clean Teferi win?
Oh, yeah. I mean, this is the Search for his Kanta combo, right?
There's the handshake. We're going to go back up to Brandon Ayers up against Jacob Wilson, though, judging by the look of things, actually, Table B had just finished. Jacob Negro taking the win, and that is going to put the win on the right side of the battlefield with Jacob, Allen, and Brandon Ayers picking up the win here in the Time Walk match of round 9.
That was a fun round to watch.
We got to see Quarkland Ironworks do something that, what's the word that I'm looking for here, was a lot more presentable.
Yeah, it was outside of the box.
Yeah.
The inside of Quarkland Ironworks' box is this combo that's really convoluted and takes forever. But sometimes you have engineered explosives and you have a scrap trawler and your opponent's playing humans. And you can just use that scrap trawler to loop that engineered explosives over and over again and leave them with absolutely no threatening permanence. And that's what we saw Jacob Wilson pull off. And it was beautiful.
Yeah.
And it was great.
He was being able to eliminate all that one was just such a powerful play, but there's going to be more Magic after this. It's going to be heading into round 10 here at Grand Prix Detroit. TJ Rogers here with Jake Van Lunen, and we'll be right back.
Up your game with Ultra Pro Magic the Gathering accessories. Find the best Magic art on card sleeves, deck boxes,